exploring minds through insightful conversation. This is the Ian Scotto Podcast.
Hey, wake up. Come on, it's time to get up. Come on, man. Come on, get up. Nah, it's time. Come on, get up. You awoke? You woke up? Well, good morning. This is what it be. I ride for the Lord. Start my days on my knees, cause I'm headed to a war. And if I don't make it back from that front line, tell my mama that I love her, everything will be fine. This is what it be. I ride for the Lord. Start my days on my knees, cause I'm headed to a war. And if I don't make it back from that front line, tell my mama that I love her, everything will be fine. Ay. Muskets busting, governments don't trust them. Chemtrails dumping, money they be lusting. Rappers fronting, faking, acting, stunting. AR loaded, come and take it, punkin'. Stand down, postman down, squad up. What's up? Wake up, fakers, patriots. Load up, man up, show up. Or they leave you with a hole like donuts. Stand up, face front, be getting ready for a war on all of us. I'm into you and take a mind if I had to bust. State of my militia ready for apocalypse. I got a mission and it was an only God I trust. And I swing it to the end and then we back to dust. What up? Is you one of us? Willing or is you a zombie that's addicted to Versace? Watch the TV and then copy every dummy and their hobbies. You an imitation copy, a commercial for your poppy. Got you branded, do you copy now? Can't trust a politician, they the enemy. They got the spirit of their father, Luciferians. I know we're outer is the outer that they plan to see. And if you're asking, revolution is the remedy. You should take a deep breath, swallow that ether. They saying choose between devils, I choose this neither.
Yes, it is me, and I am back. We're back with another edition of the Ian Scotto Podcast. I went away for a couple of weeks. Not even doing anything important. Last week I was in Atlantic City, saw Motley Crue, who was incredible. Also went to a Third Eye Blind show because I saw they were playing with my good friend Stevie D. And it was good times, but I'm back, and this week we have Marz coming on, which is awesome. Really psyched to have him coming on. Chicago rapper, a lot of history, and you're going to learn about it. But there's a lot that's been going on with where this podcast is going to go, and I have some ideas for some things that might become like an offshoot of this podcast, or it might become the podcast itself. If you followed my radio career, I guess you'd say, or if you just listened to me on WRHU when I was on there, like you might know that I was doing shows with some of my good friends like Sadiq Faruqi and Greg Overhols and some other people. Those are the two that really stand out to me that I did radio shows with in the past. And I feel like sometimes that's me at my peak when I'm having engaging conversations with someone I could bounce my ideas off of and they could bounce their ideas off of me. And that's really what I'm into. It's just very engaging conversation. Not to say that that's not what this is. I like how I spotlight someone and we kind of have an engaging conversation about what they're up to in their history. But I kind of like the free-flowing when I'm with someone every week that I do a show with. And I haven't really had that for a while. I can tell you Greg Overhols, who I mentioned, is living in Texas now, and he's working on the Kid Craddock Show, doing his own podcast, by the way, which you can check out at the Greg and Greg Show. Sadiq Faruqi is doing his own thing. So it was just like, I didn't really have anyone that I felt was really like in the zone for what it was that I want to accomplish with a podcast. So it was like, let me do this on my own, and I created this format that you're listening to now of spotlighting people every week, which I think is cool. Like I love spotlighting these people every week, and I bring on whoever I want, and I get a lot out of it. But I kind of want to bring back that engaging conversation aspect with someone who I'm familiar with, who the audience will get familiar with, and I have found the right person to do that with. I don't know how it's going to work out. I don't know if it's going to be a different podcast from this or if it's going to become this one. And I know I'm talking in very vague terms, but it's because it's kind of just an idea floating around. But it's going to happen, I can tell. So if you stay tuned to the page, I'll let you know exactly what's going on. But it's I don't even want to be sound crazy here, but I want to do something that's life-changing and something that is motivational, because that's what I get into. Like, my favorite podcast out right now, I'll shout him out, is the Joe Rogan podcast, because you feel motivated and inspired when you listen to Joe, and you feel like you're getting all these new ideas, and I want to bring that to the table. But I was waiting around for someone who could do that with me, and I think I have that now. So, like I said, I know it's like, from a marketing standpoint, this is what they do whenever they want to market something new. They talk in extremely vague terms to get you excited, and well, I want you to get excited, but that's not really why I'm doing it. It's just that we don't have the entire plan down yet, but we're getting there. And once it gets to that point, you'll hear some new stuff that's going to be very different from what I'm doing now. But for right now, I'm going to continue doing these spotlighting podcasts, which are really cool. All right, so joining us right now on the Ian Scotto podcast is a guy that you're probably familiar with, or you might be familiar with if you're a fan of so many bands and rappers, whether it's, Dark Lotus or Korn or Ministry, Marz. And you might be like, what's that guy up to now? And you're up to plenty of stuff. So thanks for coming on, man.
Thank you for having me, my brother. Yeah, we got a ton of things going on now. I feel like I've been very blessed. I've had a very diverse musical career.
Definitely.
From Ministry to, I started in hip-hop. So what I loved was hip-hop. And then by a very bizarre set of circumstances, I met Al Jurgensen, who was the front man of Ministry. And literally he saw me. I was working in the studio. We looked at each other, just said hi. He went into the other room. He said, "Who's that guy?" They told him. They called me into the room. He hired me on the spot.
Did you originally start, if we're going to start Ministry, did you originally start as an engineer for them? Because I know you engineered some stuff and then become the guitarist, or were you the guitarist?
No, I was not the guitarist. That was that night, the story I was just telling you, that's when he hired me to be the engineer. He's like, "Hey, you want to be the engineer? I'll pay you this amount of money." I was like, "I'm not an engineer." And he said, "Either am I, we'll figure it out."
Yeah.
I was like, "Okay." And that's how it started. And then later, he hired me on to play guitar. He had one of the other guitar players show me all the parts, so I would go home. I rehearsed, before we went on that first tour, I rehearsed probably for a good solid 2 months before we even started rehearsal. I knew the songs better than the band that wrote the old songs.
That's crazy, man.
Yeah.
So then you ended up touring with them as a guitarist, right?
Yeah. Then we did 2 world tours. One of them is documented on a DVD. I believe it's called either Filth Pig or Dark Side of the Spoon. I can't remember right now. I think it's Filth Pig.
Well, those were both albums by them, so
yeah,
that you worked on.
Yeah, that I worked on and toured on.
Crazy, man. So when I actually picked up the phone just to say what's up, you told me something that I actually was completely unaware of, and that's perfect to talk about here on the podcast. You're doing a documentary right now?
I'm doing a documentary. I'm trying to figure out how to explain this right now, because it would kind of jump over, from where I started and the way that I started in both music and the things that I was involved in my life spiritually, to where I am right now has been quite a journey. And the documentary is going to be called Wake the Dead. My next album is also called Wake the Dead.
So that's why I'm seeing Wake the Dead on all the videos you're putting up.
Yeah. So it's spiritual, but it applies to every area. So let me give you an example. Let's say you have a tree, and the tree is not doing that good, or you want to knock this tree down. You don't go hacking at the branches of the tree. You go at the root of the tree. Do you follow me?
Yeah.
So at the root, I believe it's a spiritual issue that we're dealing with. I don't believe that we came out of carbon, a dead, lifeless, thoughtless, unintelligent, no conscious having carbon, and then evolved into intelligence and consciousness. I believe it happened the other way. I believe from consciousness came matter. You follow me?
Yeah.
That would be the simplest way of saying it without taking over this whole conversation with that. So at the heart of these life issues, it's a spiritual issue. So what we're going to deal with is deal with the branches of the issue, which is, everything from politics to the music industry to media to Hollywood to our school systems,
Sure,
and
sure.
kind of expose those things. But then the bottom line is it's a spiritual issue. Like we could argue about those things, and we could try to, kind of put a Band-Aid over the bullet holes of those issues. But the core issue, if you really, really want to change it, is a spiritual issue.
And the thing is, for people, by the way, and we will get into all your history, there's so much to get into, but for people who followed your career, they know you from doing so many different types of music, whether it's industrial and then kind of more mainstream sounding hip hop to what you're doing now. And straight up, I could tell people, I've kept up with you through the years, and I think the music you're doing now, no BS in you, is the best stuff you've ever done, because you can tell it's coming from a very real place. And I think, like all artists, at some point lose a little direction. It's like you need to feel inspired. You need to find something that you want to say with your music, because otherwise, what's the point of doing this? And you have a message, and it's, for people who might not be into the spiritual message, it's beyond that. It's a political message, and I think it's a message of freedom. As someone who's a libertarian, as someone, who does have a spiritual background as well, it's something that can appeal to a large audience and really inspire them, I think, and I'm loving the new tracks.
Man, thank you. I really appreciate that, and you're absolutely right. I've seen, from when I got sidetracked, there's a lot of traps put in front of you, in any industry, but let's say, in the music industry in particular, living out in L.A., and all of a sudden you get caught up in this false, fake, superficial, fake breast implants and fake lip having. You got to have the car, and you got to have that girl.
Yeah.
It's very easy to get caught up in that, and I did get caught up.
Yeah, I was going to say, for a while, I feel like some of the stuff you were doing, and although, like, lyrically it was dope, like, you will always have the flow that you have, man, so it will always appeal to a certain, group of people. But it sounded a little bit more materialistic. It sounded a little bit more like mainstream hip-hop, the same stuff you're hearing on the radio from a lyrical standpoint, to what you're doing now, which is kind of the antithesis of that. What made you kind of do a complete 180 like that?
Well, the quote I could give you that might explain it the easiest is, sometimes you got to try the things you're not to find out what you are. And ironically, I think coming into the game, I was completely against that stuff. But you get caught up in the hype, and I'm just being real, and I think that's what happens with most of these artists that are on the radio right now. I know some of them. I don't know all of them, so I'm going to generalize. I don't think they're evil. I don't think their plan is like world domination and to destroy your children. And,
Sure.
You know what I'm saying? But you just get caught up in the fakeness of it.
Well, you know what? I think it goes beyond music. I was actually having a conversation with my friend Brian last night about this, who I think thinks on a deeper level the way that we do. And I don't hate when we talk about politicians and the drone strikes going and all the stuff that you talk about in your music. I don't hate the politicians. I hate the actual system. I don't hate, Barack Obama or George Bush personally. I think that they are, to some extent, you could honestly say, puppets in a system that they really didn't create.
Absolutely.
When I heard Barack Obama campaigning, although I was a Ron Paul guy, when he talked about that he wanted to change things and change the system and get out of these wars, even though he's done the exact opposite, I think he genuinely believed that. And then when he got to that position of president, he realized that one man cannot change this entire system, and he kind of had to play into that system. So I don't hate any of these people in positions of power. I want to change the whole system around, and it plays into music and every other aspect of society, as you said.
Absolutely, and I agree with you on that. So the people that are in the background that are really running things, I don't believe, and we might disagree on this, but I don't believe the president is running the show.
No, I don't either.
He is the person that is put in front of the camera for us to put our anger at and our discontent towards that one figure or one political party, but really the people that are controlling things in the background, most of us don't even know their name. Most people have no idea that those people exist, you know. So so if you look at what was happening politically when Barack Obama came in, if you look at all the people that worked for Bush, they just got kind of twirled around, you know. So the same people, the same policies, not only did they not change, they got faster. It got exponentially faster and quicker, you know what I mean, to get these policies into office. So we've lost more rights, you know, we've done more drone strikes and done more very questionable things throughout the whole world.
And when we hear about these drone strikes and these innocent civilians being killed and the idea of drones possibly being used on American citizens on American soil, we've already used them. It's a fact that we've already used them on American citizens on other people's soil. Anwar al-Awlaki and his son, who was a teenager, we killed them, you know, with a drone. Do I believe Barack Obama is this evil guy behind the scenes who's saying, yeah, let's kill these people? No, I really don't believe one man is like that, and I agree with you. It's not this one man running the show, and it's not a dictatorship the way people think. It's an entire group of the elite. And when we say that, we sound like conspiracy theorists. And I will say, I don't consider myself a conspiracy theorist. I don't believe in all these conspiracies that people say. I look into everything. But it's an absolute fact that these people meet at these Bilderberg meetings every year. You can look it all up. You can see the Bohemian Grove on Google Maps if you look, and they meet there every year. And do I know exactly what goes on? No, and neither do you. But, like, all I would like is the media to acknowledge that this goes on, and maybe we could try to uncover some of it, but it goes completely ignored.
Well, I think we're at a point, you know, and again, whether this was a consciously man-made, planned-out thing or not, I don't know, but we're at a point where it's a systematic dumbing down of our whole culture.
Sure.
So if you think, you know, or if you question something, you know, people are like, you're a conspiracy theorist, you know, and this isn't people, you know, let's say for me, I don't smoke weed, I don't get intoxicated.
Me neither, man. I stopped all that.
Yeah, you know, so it's not a bunch of stoners in a basement going, oh, man, I think the government's doing something. It's not that. It's facts that anybody with, you know, with a computer, now you could find this out all for yourself. You know, there's so many things going on, but the media is not going to post it because the people in control of the media are in bed with the people that are kind of doing these things. You know what I mean? And I have... When reality really hit me, I thought of this. You know, I was very how would I say this? In Chicago, it's very challenging to not be involved in the gang culture. Like the gang culture is so prevalent in Chicago, it's just a whole other level. But think about this. So let's say an average little gang that controls a couple of blocks, they'll have you killed. I mean, for cheap. They'll do it for free. But if it's like a professional hit, it'll cost you a couple grand. Now, they'll do this over a couple $1,000s. So let's say you owe them a couple $1,000, some drug deal went bad, bam, they have you killed, right, for a couple $1,000s. Now imagine these multi-billion-dollar corporations that are involved in our politics. Do you think they would allow the average person in America to vote on and change their policy and how they run things and to change how they make their billions of dollars?
It's a hard question, and here's the thing. Working in political talk radio, I meet so many of these people. I meet a lot of congressmen, and I do think that there are those people who we do vote in sometimes who slip through the cracks, who think like us. And, you know, I actually, you know, I do vote, and I know that you don't think voting changes things, and that's a whole nother topic. Yeah. But I do think there are those people who are in politics, and there's few of them who have the same beliefs as us behind the scenes and want to change the entire system. But most of them, no. And I get what you mean. There's someone running the show behind everything in politics. For those just tuning in, I'm on with Marz, and you can check Marz out on his new Twitter. He's got to get some new followers on there. It's John Marz Brown, and that's JohnMarz Brown. That's the new Twitter, because I know you just started it up. You had like a bunch of more followers, but you got to get that stuff back on board. there's so much to talk about with you, and I do love talking about all this, but I want to get into what you're up to and your history for people who are wondering where you've been. We talked a little bit about Ministry, and from Ministry, you went on to do your own solo rap stuff, and then all of a sudden you joined a group with Insane Clown Posse, Twisted and Blaze, Dark Lotus, which you were only on for, a little bit. There's a lot of drama that went on, but how did that all go down? How did you go to do your own solo stuff to doing Dark Lotus?
I was always doing my own solo stuff. That's how I met Ministry. I was in the studio working on my own stuff, and that was always my dream. I was always driven to do my own music,
Sure.
So then when I got signed to this label that was out in New York named Imagine Records, and we were looking for a tour, and they contacted me and they said, look, there's this band called ICP, the Insane Clown Posse, going out on tour. And I didn't know about ICP, so I was like, is it hip-hop?
Yeah.
Because my album was kind of hip-hop. My stuff was kind of like industrial hip-hop. Like
Exactly. It had some of that guitar sound.
Yeah, which Ministry influenced from being around them and touring with them. I wanted to use that energy because, hip-hop live does not have the same energy as like a real heavy rock band or a metal band.
I completely agree with you on that. As someone who's a hip-hop head and also a metal head, man, like it is not the same experience. You know who I saw recently, man? I saw Motley Crue, and they put on a live show that I really could not see replicated by any rap group, and I've been to plenty of rap shows, so I know what you mean.
Yeah, you can, and so when I saw that and from touring with her, I'm like, man, I want to incorporate some of this into what I'm doing. And speaking of which, when I first did that, one of the first shows I ever played with, Tommy Lee came to the show.
That's crazy, man. He seems like a very cool guy.
He was so cool. Bro, his security guard comes backstage, and he's like, Tommy Lee's outside. He wants to know if he could come in. And I was like, Tommy, what? Like,
and he's very into hip-hop and all that, man, when he put out Methods of Mayhem and all that stuff.
Yeah, that was exactly around the time, you know what I mean? And so yeah, he was super cool. But so then I released my own album, got on tour with ICP. While on tour with them, which was a really crazy experience, they asked me, they saw a couple of the shows, saw me perform a couple times, and were like, yo, we got this project called Dark Lotus. Do you want to be on it? And I was like, well, what is it? And they said it's real dark. It's like all this witchcraft stuff. And at the time, I was heavily involved in that.
Sure.
In the occult. And I'm like, man, I could do that with my eyes closed. Like, so we did, and they weren't into any of that stuff.
The way you were.
Yeah.
Because you if you listen to the CD, you bring a very dark element to it. And I wasn't familiar with you until I heard Dark Lotus. I was always a fan of Twisted, even more so than ICP. And I remember just, I'm 26, and this was a while. I mean, this was years ago that this was put out. So I was like a little kid at the mall, saw that, black CD with the red cross, the Dark Lotus, didn't know who you were, popped it in. And it blew me away, man. It's still a great album to this day. And your verses did stand out as some of the more dark, really dark verses on there.
Yeah, because my whole thing was I was just aggressive and kind of like.
You weren't as comedic as them. They kind of brought more of that comedic element, and you really wanted to bring a real life dark element, I feel like.
Yeah, well, I always looked at it like, the difference was is they were into wrestling and I was into like cage fighting.
Sure.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Their lyrics are like, frog legs, chicken wings, bat wing.
There's more fantasy.
Yeah, it was fantasy and comedy, but mine wasn't. Mine was more like aggro and dark. And, glory to God, I'm not at that place in my life anymore.
Sure.
You know what I mean?
But you probably had to go through that to get to where you are now. So it's always a blessing in disguise, man.
Absolutely, and I feel like because of everything I went through now, I could speak to all those people. Because of all those things, I could go into certain areas, Here, what I'm doing now, my whole goal is to bless, So through my music, through documentaries, through whatever, we're putting together a multimedia company right now called Canon, where the goal is to disciple the youth, because right now the media disciples us. You follow me on that? Do you understand what I'm saying? They make disciples. So through movies, there's an indoctrination through music and everything.
Through education, all of it.
Yeah, and it's true. It just is what it is, whether people agree or not. That is what's happening. So the goal is now for me to do it in a different way. So my goal with my music and whatever I'm involved with is to speak life into you, to speak encouragement into you, to lift you up.
No, I got you, man. I'm wondering, by the way, because you were saying you were very into that dark witchcraft stuff at the time, and you're a guy who's covered in tattoos. Do you have any, like satanic-looking tattoos from the Dark Lotus days?
I never did any Dark Lotus tattoos. I always did. That was a very short period of my life. I mean,
and I do want to cover all of it. So yeah, but I was wondering, man.
Totally. But a lot of people asked me about that, and it was like, it took us maybe, I don't know, like 2 or 3 weeks to record the album, and then, I did another leg of the tour with them, and that was it.
Well, here's the thing. For people who are unfamiliar, from what I know, I think they wanted you to sign to their label, right?
Yeah.
And you weren't really willing to do that, so they basically were like, fuck this guy, and they got rid of you.
Yeah, and made up crazy lies. Jay in his book made up these crazy lies.
And that's Violent J from ICP, for those unfamiliar.
Yeah, and I got no beef with him.
What did he say about you, man?
I mean, they tried to get me while we were recording that album. They wanted me. They were like, "Look, we're going to go on the second leg of the tour." You know what I mean? They loved my verses. You know what I mean? Jay loved my verses. Twisted were like, man, I remember I recorded one verse. I don't remember which verse it was, but I got done, and I was like, "Is that cool?" And they were like, "Nah, man, you should change some of that. Like, we don't want to go to hell." You know what I'm saying? And I started laughing, but Violent J was like, nah, leave it. So that whole time, I was staying at Jay's house. I would drive from Chicago to Detroit, and I was staying at his house. So every day he was like, you should paint your face with us when we go on this tour. And I'm like, nah, bro, that's not me. That's you. I'm not doing that. That's you, So that whole time, for those couple of weeks, constantly, he's like, nah, you should. It's like a package tour. It was going to be them, me, Blaze, your dead homie, and I believe that's it. So, and I didn't want to do it. At the end of the recording, so a couple weeks in, we were driving to the studio one day. Him and Shaggy were there, and he asked me again, and I'm like, nah, man, I'm not going to do it. Like, that's your guy's style. And then he was like, Shaggy, tell him. And I really like Shaggy. He's a cool, funny dude. And he's like, nah, come on, do it with us. It'll be cool. You just got to do it for this tour. That's it. I'm like, all right, I'll do it,
Because I remember you had like the skeleton-looking face paint.
Yeah, but after like all that, he comes out with a book and then says how I stole their style. He tried to steal it by painting my face. So I was salty about that. The people that read that aren't going to know.
Well, I was going to say the crazier thing is, and it must have felt like a huge sign of disrespect for those who followed Dark Lotus in that day, was when they completely eradicated your verses from the album and replaced them with someone else.
With ABK, yeah. I'm cool with ABK too, And
but he must have felt weird doing that, man, to take out your verses and repackage the whole album as if you never existed. Yeah, you know what I'm saying? It was weird. And the thing is, the last conversation I had with Jay, because I could feel there was something going on as far as, like, he was starting to act weird with me. And he was saying these weird lies, and it was getting back to me from his own people. So I called him. I was in Chicago, and I said, where you at, bro? And he's like, we're in the studio. I said, who's in the studio? And he's like, everybody was Twisted, ABK, Blaze. I said, I'm hopping in the car right now. I want to come and talk. So we talk face-to-face, so ain't this he say, she say stuff. He's like, all right, cool, we're all here. I got there. They were all gone. And there's one dude named Rude Boy there. And I'm like, what happened, bro? He's like, you know how it is, man. And I'm like, all right, cool. And that was it. Like, we had a falling out after. I never had a falling out with Twisted or Blaze or... You were even supposed to do a tour with Twisted, I remember, when they put out the Green Book. And I think Jay, said ixnay that. He told them, that he would drop them if they did it. They approved it. Like, they approved the tour. Like, it was done. And then when I had spoke to them, I found out all type of crazy stuff that I don't really want to, like, dirty his name right now. I feel like it's over, and I pray blessings over that dude, you know what I mean? So whatever's going on is cool. I forgive him. Hopefully he forgives me, because then I did a couple diss songs against them, and at the time it wouldn't have been a good thing if we would have ran into each other. But where I'm at right now, I just wish blessings over him. We both made mistakes. We both probably let our pride and our egos get involved in it. Do you know what I mean? Sure.
It was a quick part of my life, and I moved on very quickly.
Well, moving on from there, I remember you got to work with, to me, musical icons, Korn, who, had Elementary Records at one point. And Elementary Records, although not around anymore, I mean, that was the label responsible for putting out Orgy and Blue Monday and all those songs that we know. So, I mean, they had some success. So I remember when I heard that Marz is signing to Elementary with John Davis and all these guys, I was like, this is awesome. This is probably going to mean big things for you. What happened with that whole thing?
It was a very bizarre experience. At that time...
How'd they discover you? I have to ask that as well. How'd they even find out about you?
I think it was through Marilyn Manson, because at that time, like I was saying, Tommy Lee had came to the show. So Tommy Lee wanted to sign me. Marilyn Manson wanted to sign me. And then Korn got a hold of me. Their management had got a hold of me, So everybody at the time was, we were trying to figure out where would be the best place to go and everything. And man, that was my dream, my whole life. I worked very hard. I had a real good work ethic, so I worked real hard, and I'm like, man, this is going to happen, So after kind of speaking on it and thinking about it, Jonathan from Korn was very aggressive in pursuing it, So I decided to go with him, and went out to L.A., recorded an album, and it was, how would I put this? Let me think. John is an amazing talent, and I got to tour with them and everything. But the irony of it is that tour, I was the most unhappiest in my life. Like, I had achieved what I wanted, what I thought I wanted. You know what I mean?
Yeah, because that was Korn. That was Korn pre-breakup with Head, leaving for religious reasons. Like that was them to some extent at the peak of their game, probably filling out arenas.
Yeah, we were doing arena shows, and Head. Right after that tour, it was the Pop Sucks tour. Head got saved,
Sure.
Gave his life to Christ, and I remember we were all like, "Wow, what in the hell just happened to that dude?" And for me, it happened a couple years after that.
Well, why were you at your most unhappy?
It's one of those things that I think a lot of us chase the external success thinking that's going to fulfill you. And the majority of people that I know that have achieved external success without a spiritual fulfillment are not fulfilled. That's why they're all on drugs. That's why they're all on Prozac or depressive. Or
yeah.
Do you know what I'm saying?
Exactly. No, I know. It's all an escape from reality because they don't want to live in reality.
Yeah, and it's, but they show it on television and they get, so let's say if you're watching television, you see this person, they're a famous singer or a famous rapper, they have the big house, the cars, the women, the money, they could do whatever they want. But if you know that person is miserable. And I'm not going to speak for all of them.
No, I know exactly what you mean, man. Working in entertainment here, working in radio, I meet people all the time who have it made on paper. Like on paper, they have all these great things going on, but for some reason, they're always angry, man. They never seem fulfilled. And like me, who's struggling here trying to make something happen, like, yeah, it does kind of suck not being able to make as much as I need to and trying to get to that level. But, at the same time, I try to live as blessed of a life as I can and really get the most out of life.
Yeah, absolutely. And, there's a different focus for me and a different goal and finishing point right now, So what happens is, and when we live like that, we're trying to achieve this earthly success. The opinion of man has a huge strength over your life. So let's say, for example, when I was building my own kingdom, so let's look at it like that. At that time, or that type of success is you building your own kingdom.
Yeah.
So me, I was building my kingdom. I had my crew around me. I had my plans, and you had to be down with my plans. And if you weren't, you need to dip out. You need to get out of the way. You know what I mean? Because this is about me.
Yeah.
It's about me achieving power and me achieving success and my dreams and my goals. And when we do that, if we do achieve it, it's just like, holy crap, I got it, and what?
Yeah, what's next?
I thought I was going to feel great, but I feel exactly the same. Now, the opposite is if you're already fulfilled, and for me, it's a spiritual thing. So the kingdom that I'm building right now or helping build is not my own, And so at the end of time, or like let's say at the last day, let's say me and you got to be together and, on the last day of both of our lives, just hypothetically.
Yeah.
And we're laying there and we're about to die. And we look back at our life. What is going to matter? Is it going to matter that I had 5 Bentleys and I had the big house, or is there something deeper than that?
Yeah, it of course is. You remember your relationships with people, your family, your relationship with God. I know exactly what you mean, man.
And once I feel like if you have that, so for example, I'm very blessed right now. I have that. I have my relationship with God where I don't need to please man. If I write a song and you like it and it blesses you, glory to God. If you don't like it, it doesn't matter to me.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? I don't need man's approval anymore, and that is freedom. Because every artist you see, or let's say 99.9% of them, they are enslaved to the opinions of men and women, and they are sitting there trying to get you to like them. So they're like, what's happening right now? What do I got to do to be liked? I need to be famous. I need to be popular. You know what I mean?
Sure.
It's this mental slavery, or what I call a mental plantation that they have us on, you know what I mean? And until we break free from it, so as an example, right now I'm content. I've been blessed, and I've had a lot of ups and downs in life, like
a ton,
everybody, man. But there's been times where I was making a lot of money.
And your ups and downs have been public too. And yeah, exactly. I mean, Ministry, those albums went platinum, right?
Yeah.
Are you still making royalties off those?
A little bit. I actually got a platinum plaque. The funniest thing, I have one platinum plaque that was for Ministry because we did a song on the Matrix soundtrack that I was on. I didn't pick it up for 10 years.
That's crazy, man. I'd be right over there.
I know, like I was just busy, and then to me, I wasn't really into that type of stuff. Like I was like, the plaques, who cares about it? But actually, when I got it, I was like, yo, this is kind of cool.
Because it's an accomplishment at the end of the day, man. You did it. You made it happen. And for people just tuning in, we're on with Marz. You can check him out on Twitter at his new Twitter, at John Marz Brown. That's JOHN MARZBROWN. It's funny. I do the same thing where we get sidetracked with so much stuff because there's so much to talk about, but I do want to make sure we cover everything. So with the corn thing, you were saying you were at your most unhappy, but kind of in some ways you're most successful. How did the falling out happen? Because I remember you're supposed to put out Gorilla Pimpin' on Elementary. It was going to be a huge deal. I think you were supposed to work with like Q Unique and those guys, right?
Yeah, and we did songs with what's that producer? I did 3 songs.
Ross Robinson, maybe?
No, Swizz Beats.
Oh, all right.
The guy that makes that.
But what happened? How come it fell off? How come
I didn't like the album at all. Like I got influenced, going to. If I would have been left alone in Chicago to do it, it would have been different. But I got, kind of swayed. They wanted to make me into a type of Limp Bizkit thing. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? So my vocals got pushed to be a certain way, and I just got. It got produced in a certain way that I didn't like at all.
But did they tell you, like, hey, we'll keep you on Elementary, you got to make a different album?
No, they kind of influenced it to go in that direction. You know what I mean? Like,
so when they didn't like the album, they were just like, you're out of here? Did they kick you off the label? I didn't
like the album. Yeah, I didn't like the album. Like, when the album was done, I just wasn't feeling it. You know what I mean? And the relationship, here's the thing. It's all about money. It is all completely about money. The record labels, it doesn't matter about the music. You know what I mean? It's sometimes they could be a fan of the music, most of the times not. Like the A&R people, you can have an A&R guy sometimes that's doing a R. Kelly album, but that A&R guy's favorite band is Guns N' Roses.
Yeah.
And he doesn't even like R&B.
Yeah, no, I know what you mean, man.
Do you know what I'm saying? So it's a money issue. So if they're like, if we're making money, you could because they're just banks, and a record label is just a bank that loans you some money to make an album that then they want to make money off of. And at the time I had what was considered a good deal, and it was 12%. So 12 cents of every dollar I would get. after they recouped, and it's basically a form of slavery.
But I would think that being on Elementary, it was a different label at the time because it wasn't record label guys who discovered you. I mean, it was the members of Korn.
It was.
They're artists themselves.
Yeah, and that was kind of a problem because John, who really he's Elementary. You know what I mean? He wasn't a label guy. Do you know what I mean? John is an artist.
Sure.
So I think to run a label and to really understand what he just was kind of throwing money at it. Like we're in New York mixing the album in the most expensive city in the world to mix an album with one of the most expensive mix engineers. They got me at the Trump Towers. I got to pay all that money back. The first night I spent at the Trump Towers, I was like, yo, get me out of there. I'm going to a friend's house. Like, I got friends in New York. I'm not spending, $350.
Yeah, because you were a guy, most people would be like, I'm going to ball out here, but you were a guy who had enough experience by that point in the music industry to know that's all coming out of my wallet.
Yeah, I got to pay all this back, and John, he just threw money like crazy. Like he was just spending ridiculous amount of money. I could have done an album in my own studio in Chicago for no money. And then delivered him an album, but he wanted me out there, and it got influenced a certain way. We toured. I was very unhappy. I was unhappy with the situation. Yeah. I was unhappy with the music, and we just kind of decided to part ways.
Didn't you end up putting out Gorilla Pimpin', the album that was going to be on there, independently?
I did put it out independently because it was a big part of my life, and so I was like, I can't just let this go to waste, but I wasn't happy with the album. And actually, let me tell you what I just did. I just recently pulled my whole catalog except for 2 albums. Completely, you can't get them anymore.
Even on iTunes, all that?
Nope, I just pulled it about 2 weeks ago. To get off iTunes, they said it could take 2 weeks to 4 weeks. So
you better cop that now if you're listening and you want those.
You better get it now because I pulled it all, and that was after a very long time of thinking about it, praying on it, and asking for some guidance from one of my mentors. And so right now there's 2 albums that I have. There's an album called Revelation, which is my latest album, and an album called Candy Days.
And where can people get those? iTunes and where else?
Yeah, iTunes, any kind of digital distribution. You know what I mean? They're CD Baby, iTunes, Amazon, all that stuff, because I feel like in a certain way my career just started.
No, I got you, and it's a whole different chapter. I got to ask this though, just to get off the whole Korn stuff, and then we'll talk about everything else. What was it like to, because I feel like you must have been at your lowest when it was like, you did your solo album and then you were with Dark Lotus. That ended up not working out for you. You get signed to Elementary with John Davis. You're no longer on the label and you're doing everything independently. Were you like, man, just nothing is working for me. What's going on here?
We used to joke about this. I'm an optimist. So I'm either like a really smart guy that's very driven, or I'm really stupid. Do you know what I'm saying? And at one point we couldn't figure it out because I just refused to stop, and I just refused to let things get me down. It's weird. I've been very blessed with that. So anytime that we would come to a hurdle, anytime that we would come to something, I'm like, other people do get upset or depressed. I went from playing with Ministry, the biggest show we ever played was 90,000 people, to doing shows where there was 9 people.
Yeah.
And then the opposite again now. It's swinging back the other way, But I've always felt, even before I got saved and started really having a relationship with Christ, even before then, I felt like I was on a spiritual journey because I had things that would happen that cannot be explained by science. Do you know what I mean? It cannot be explained by regular earthly logic.
Yeah.
So I always knew there was something else, so I just am driven like that. You know what I'm saying? So as long as I feel I have songs in me, I'm going to do them.
Well, what's going to happen with all this in the future? Because you're putting out songs, you're like kind of slowly rolling them in through YouTube, stuff that's not on an album yet. But like, it's been a while since we've seen, as you said, you're a guy who played arenas at one time, since we saw like a real Marz tour. You're playing some shows in Chicago here and there from what I see. are you ever going to hit the road again, or is that just kind of out of the question now?
No, I believe we will, but and I've been asked to be on some things that I've turned down. So right now my focus is the new album and the documentary, and putting a team together for a multimedia company that's just been coming together, both from the artists. We plan on. Let me give you a 5-year plan. In 5 years, the goal is to have a multimedia company where we're releasing albums by multiple artists, videos, clothing, movies, and books that are gonna bless your life. That are incredibly talent driven. You know what I mean? And creativity driven, bold, and where the underlining thing is you're going to leave whatever you're listening to or watching, you're going to leave there built up and better than when you first showed up.
I got you, man. That's what it's all about.
Yeah, so that's the goal. I trust, and I'm going to just keep moving it. So, but I have had so many, and it's funny now. Looking back, it's funny to me. Because it just shows you the truth of life, and it shows you what's genuine as opposed to what's false. So let me give you an example. Touring with Korn, or touring with Ministry, or even some of the tours that we did solo, or touring with like Tech Nine and Paul Wall. You get to experience the people that how would I say this? The people that are like the good time, love you people. Like, they love you.
Yeah.
When everything is going good. But then when you're at the other side of the pendulum, you get to really experience the real people that really love you, not the artist, not the person that could hypothetically be so successful that it brings them up to, do you know what I mean? But people that just genuinely love you for who you are. So I've got to experience both. You know what I mean?
Yeah, man, definitely. The new stuff sounds, because I was going to say, your stuff that you put out more recently, like a little bit more religious. The stuff that you put out before these videos you've been putting on YouTube, like 1776 and all these songs, were like a little bit more religious, less political, and you seem like you're going in a more political direction, but still keeping the spiritual aspect.
Well, yes. And I'll let you know my vision of that is I don't feel like I'm religious. I feel like Christ came to destroy religion and to restore our relationship with God, with the Father. So I look at it as it's relational. Religion is like a lot of
money.
Religion is a lot of money, but it's also a lot of like you're just doing fake, kind of like empty movements without the genuine relationship with a creator. So it would be like, okay, stand up, sit down, pray this many times a day, do this, you get this list of rules.
Yeah.
And that where relationship is different, let's say in a relationship with a husband and wife, it's a love relationship, not a list of rules. So if I have to give you a list that says, don't cheat on me, that's not a love relationship. That would be religion.
Yeah.
You dig what I'm saying? So
I got you, man.
So the way I look at it is I don't feel like I'm religious, and actually I've been kicked out of 2 churches, which I'm kind of proud about that, which was hilarious.
Yeah, I'd like to hear that story.
Well, because I read, so I came into this, my father is Muslim, my mother is Catholic. Growing up, the first book I ever read was the Satanic Bible. So I did not come into Christianity thinking that Christ was real. I spent a long time, and I've always kind of been a nerd. I'd like to read. So, growing up, from getting into the occult to getting into like quantum physics books and getting into Eastern philosophy and Buddhism and metaphysics, like I went looking to see, okay, well, where is it? Because I know there's more to life than this, than what I could see. But what exactly is it? So trying acid, you know what I'm saying? Mushrooms and all those things. And then for me today to be like, I'm a Christian. I believe Christ is our Lord and Savior. I believe he died. I believe he was raised from the dead. I genuinely believe that. Now, it isn't only because I read about it. It's because I've experienced it. So I could tell you, how I've been studying the Bible now for 4.5 years. I could sit with almost anybody, and we could talk about it. I could sit with the atheist. I could sit with the person that says the Bible has been corrupted. I could sit with the person that says all religions are the same, blah, 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 and we could, have a loving discussion.
Yeah, without you being preachy about it, which is what turns people off. I mean, I'm not a Christian, but hey, I would love to have that discussion with you.
And I would love to have it with you, too, because I used to be that other guy. So if you would have told me a couple years ago, one day I'm going to be a Christian rapper, I would have been like, dude, you're nuts.
Yeah. Here's the thing that I'm wondering, man. Do you worry at all? I know you said you don't worry about the opinions of man, and I get that. But, just as a musician, do you worry that being, labeled a Christian rapper is going to turn people off who might not be into that aspect? Because I will say, for me, man, I'm a completely open-minded person, which I think more people should be, man. Like, I love Slayer. I might not agree with some of the things that they're making music about, but it's, it's great music at the end of the day. And if someone is a Christian rapper, if the music's good and the message is genuine, coming from them, I'm into it. What's most important is if it's good music, if it's something they genuinely believe in. But there's also those people who are closed-minded that are going to say Christian rapper, like, I don't want to hear it.
Absolutely there are. You know what I'm saying? Like, I know that. But that would be like saying anything. Let's say that you actually are something and someone's telling you, well, you don't want to let people know about that part because they might not like you.
Yeah.
Or it might affect your finances or something.
Sure.
It's
compromising yourself.
Yeah, and I would be phony then. I would be being fake. So I could right now, actually I can't, but let's say hypothetically, I could write songs and not mention it because it's not just about telling you. I don't have to tell you in every song I'm a Christian. I don't have to say, in every verse, Jesus, Jesus. I don't have to do that, and I think the people that do that, is kind of lame. Although I can do that, and I have songs where I do that. There's a lot of songs like my song "Beautiful Music." I don't mention Christ in it per se. You know what I mean? I mention God in it, but you're never going to satisfy anybody. So this is what happens. If you go on YouTube, I don't know if you've seen it. Look up Marz, Beautiful Music. So I've had Christians say, this isn't Christian music. This belongs on the street, not in the church. Why can he not mention Christ more? Blah, 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 And then I've had worldly people say, actually, they thought I was swearing in it, which I'm not. So it kind of just shows that people don't really pay attention to what you're saying.
Yeah, because I know you stopped that. That's just like you stopped drugs and all that. So I know it's a part of you now.
And it just kind of stopped itself. It's not a thing. Again, this isn't a thing where I was like, oh, I have to be good now because God wants me to be good. It's not like that at all. As come as you are, once you have a relationship with God, you're going to be transformed. You're just going to change.
It's the realization that you came to from all this, man, not someone telling you what to do. I get it. You know what I was going to say, though, by the way, is, man, what separates you from other people who might call themselves Christian rappers is, like, you've proven yourself as a rapper over the years. Like, you've done all this stuff with all these groups that we covered. And you, like, in the mainstream world, in all these worlds, in underground hip hop, like, you've proven that you're a great musician. So I think people who might not even be into that need to check you out because you're a guy who's done it. I can tell you I work on a, conservative, libertarian-minded, I guess you'd say, talk show. That's what I do 5 days a week when I'm not doing this podcast. And we get submitted so many bands that, carry the same message of the radio show and they want to be on the show. But, like, the bottom line is sometimes the music sucks. Like, even if I love your message and it's genuine and it's great and all that, like, if the music sucks, I really don't want to hear it, man. So, like, people need to check you out because you've done so much stuff before you became a Christian rapper and you're still, you've proven yourself as a musician.
I appreciate that, man. And, thank you for that. And I think that also gives me the ability to then speak to certain types of people because it's not like I only heard about that, but I was there. Do you know what I mean? So I feel like I have a valid opinion or a valid view on that because I came up from that. I wasn't, born into this belief system. I wasn't raised in this belief system. This is something through a life of genuinely trying to be real. And even when I was doing my other music, I was always in the moment. This is where I'm at. I would write songs of this is what's happening. This is where I'm at right now. I never kind of stayed with the same formula for too long.
Not at all, man. All your stuff sounds very different. There's some of it I love. Some of it is not really my thing, I'll be honest, man.
Yeah, and it's just a moment in time, and I just try to take snapshots of this is where I'm at, this is how I'm thinking, this is what the world looks like to me, this is a worldview, just being an artist, do you know what I mean? And capturing it and then moving on. So as far as the political songs now, I feel like maybe it's, as I'm getting more mature, as I'm seeing what's happening in this world, and you get to a point where you kind of stop ignoring it and you realize, I'm waiting for somebody else to do something. Maybe that's me. Maybe I'm that somebody. You know what I mean? So instead of just, first acknowledging that we have some issues. We have some very serious issues in the world, and specifically in this country, and for me specifically in my city, that unless some men and women, but, for me, because I'm a man, I like to speak to the men. We're made to be leaders. Are we leading? So, or do we just sit back, kind of let it happen, or do we ignore it? Do we get drunk and high and be like, whatever, that's just life, that's the way things are? Or do we try to make an impact, and at what level? I think the first level is exposing it, getting people that don't see these things are happening, getting them to wake up and see that they are happening, and then trying to have an influence and trying to better where we are. I love America. I love my country. I love this country.
Same here, man.
I believe even though
even if you hate the politicians and the system, like what this country stands for, the Constitution, we have to stand up for those things.
Exactly. And I believe that's a part of it. This isn't about America bashing. This is standing up for what America stands for by exposing these things that are happening in politics and in government. Those are two different things. Our country is amazing, but for some reason, our politicians have been kind of going crazy, you know what I mean, and really, basically destroying the Constitution.
Yeah. And I think people don't say that what makes this country great is like people take advantage of the fact that in this country we do have free speech, we do have the right to bear arms, and they are being destroyed in front of us, but we need to make it clear, like, these are principles that this country was founded on, and we need to stand for them. You know what I'm wondering, though, is like you talked about your spiritual awakening, and I don't want to wrap up the interview without you really getting into this a little bit. What was your political awakening? Because I can tell you there were a few things that I saw in my life when I realized, man, like a lot of what I was taught about the way this system was run is all a lie. And it kind of slowly came to me. Was there like a moment in time where that came to you?
It was a combination of spiritual, political, because what really started having me question things was chemtrails. Now, I don't know where you're at with chemtrails. I heard about chemtrails.
I know about the whole thing, and I'm not sure if I buy into it all. But, let me know. Well, so tell me the story, yeah.
Okay, so, I started hearing about chemtrails literally about 10 years ago, and I completely thought it was just goofy. I was like, this is not real, like, whatever, and then...
And for those who don't know, just describe what they are with planes, what they're doing.
Okay, there's contrails, which is condensation trails that come out of jets when they're at a certain height, and it's water being condensed, and they disappear very fast. It's those white streaks in the sky. They vanish within a couple minutes, maybe 5 minutes at the most, but they go away. A chemtrail is a chemical trail that planes leave, and they're not regular planes, but they'll stay in the sky for hours, sometimes almost the whole day. And what happens is when it's chemtrails, you could look and see that it's specific grids being made. So I kept hearing about this, and I was watching it. I seen some things on YouTube about it. I'm like, that's not real. And one day I was outside, and I was outside all day. We were working on a friend of mine's house, and I watched how it systematically, starting on the north side of our city, went to the south side, then from the west side to the east side. A grid was made over the city, literally. And I was like, what the hell is that? Like, that's not normal. Like, it looked like a specific targeted thing. So I really started looking into it and reading up on it. And now this is another thing that is no longer a hypothesis. It is not a conspiracy theory. It's fact. It's happening, and what the scientists that have exposed this say it is aluminum, barium, and I believe the other chemical is strontium. And they're saying that it is being sprayed to counteract global warming. So the aluminum is being sprayed into the sky to kind of reflect the sunlight, but it actually just falls down into the ground. Now, and if you look at, you could look all this up. If you look at the level of autism, Alzheimer's, every type of cancer, infertility, at the same time that people started reporting these chemical trails in the sky, if you look at a graph on all those diseases, it's crazy.
Yeah, there's a lot of stuff I've read kind of on both sides, and I'll be honest, I'm not fully convinced of all of it, but, people do need to wake up and read about it and kind of form their own conclusions on those things. Wrapping up, though, man, I'm just wondering, what have you been listening to lately? What's been influencing the music you've been putting out? Other than, your beliefs and all that, what have you just been, bumping in your own ride?
I listen to gospel music.
Really, man?
Yeah, I listen to gospel music. There's a couple Chicago rappers that I like. One dude's name is Gemstones, who's amazing, and he kind of has a similar testimony. He was signed to Lupe Fiasco's label, and he got saved and just left the music industry and started doing, his own thing. So, but generally, yeah, I listen to gospel.
But come on, man, there's got to be some mainstream rappers and rock groups that you're hearing every now and again and at least like what they're doing.
Man, I try, but I just can't. It's like this, man. You get in this zone where if your paradigm of reality is at a certain place, and then listening to other people and you feel like that they're just almost like this. Let's say, I hope nobody takes this the wrong way, but let's say me and you, now we're speaking on these things that, we might not agree on everything, but we could speak at a certain level of...
Yeah, there's no yelling between us, man. I'm hearing you out, you're hearing me out.
Yeah, but now, so let's say we're experiencing life and seeking things out and seeking truth. And now there's a kid, right? And the kid's 5 years old. And the kid starts telling us about his crayons and the things that are important to him in his life and all that. We could listen to him for a little while, but after a while, we wouldn't really be paying attention to his speech.
I know exactly what you mean, man.
and so that's where I'm at with a lot of the music.
It's funny. I was actually talking about this with, like I said, man, friend of mine last night. We had just a deep, good conversation. I might be working with him on the podcast in the future, but it's just once you kind of open yourself up to all these things that we're talking about and learn about them, it's hard to have a conversation with regular people in the world, man, who aren't just enlightened to these new ideas or aren't open-minded to them. Because, yeah. And it's also a lot of just this false paradigm between the two, which is why you said, I could say to you, man, I've researched this stuff and I disagree with you here and there. And I don't even want to get into all that, but there's a level of civility between us because you could see that we're on the same thinking pattern that we're on. It's not this hostile environment that you see throughout the media, which I think there's too much of that, man.
Yeah, and like I said, right now, let's say the chemtrails specifically, I was there too. It took me 10 years of looking into it to finally be this is not normal. So do I know exactly what's going on or why? No. And I've got to travel, so I've seen it happening in Europe, and so I'm at a point where after years of looking into it, of looking at both sides, I feel I came to this conclusion. So
that's fine, man. And what's funny is that's what separates us from the rest of society who doesn't want to look into these things. I think you have to accept at a certain point that I don't know everything and I'm never going to know everything and there's always going to be more to explore. I think a lot of people walk around in society think they have it all figured out and they don't know anything, man.
Yeah, and that's a very liberating feeling. And also, I don't want to be right. I just want to know the truth. So I don't need to, argue with you so I can be right and show everybody how smart I am. That's not the point, because if we do that, you're not going to know the truth. So it's do we want to know truth or do we want to be right? Do you know what I'm saying? And I would rather come into a conversation with you or with anybody else wanting to know truth. And I think when you do that, it keeps it from being hostile, and it keeps you open to learning, and it keeps you humble, knowing that, man, I make mistakes all the time still. So if you could show me something I didn't see before, glory to God. I'm grateful for it.
Yeah, man. That's an incredible way of putting it, and incredible way to wrap up the podcast, man. This has been an amazing conversation, and it kind of flew by, and we covered so much ground. Marz, if you're ever in New York, man, we got to do this in studio.
Absolutely. I would love to, bro. It's been a pleasure, man. Thank you for your time, bro.